While James spent most of his lonely hours on the mountain, reading, his other three brothers could care less about books, especially the twins, Jacob and Mason, who would rather drink moonshine and play mumbledy-peg barefoot, even though Mason had self-amputated two of his own toes with bad knife throws from being too drunk to care, and his lack of depth perception because of his one eye. But James knew better than to talk down to Jacob and Mason, as each of his brothers weighed over 250 pounds and looked like true mountain men, with their rough appearances and woolly beards. Their jobs were, when the time arose, hauling the packs of hemp down the mountain. James' older brother Landon was head of the family business and was in charge of distribution. Only on rare occasions did he come up to the field. James was glad that this would be his last night on the mountain until his next time around. All he could think of when he was up here alone were his brothers carousing at home, getting drunk on 200-proof pure-grain alcohol, and having a good time. Sometimes they got out of hand, but Landon quickly interceded, as he'd swore he'd be damned if he'd let them drink themselves blind. Though it was another hour before sunset, daylight seemed to wane under the dense forest canopy. He figured he better prepare for nightfall and light the lantern inside the cave. For dinner, he planned on eating some pulled pork and heating a pot of corn kernels on the camp stove. That's when he heard something moving about out in the field. The tall plants swayed, as whatever it was cut a path behind the rows. James reached down and picked up his bushmaster. He tucked the buttstock into his shoulder and aimed the weapon, aligning the front sight on any intended target that might show itself. By the heavy scuffling footfalls, it sounded big. There were a few black bears in the area, but they always seemed to keep their distance. Normally, he would be alarmed, but he felt confident holding his assault rifle. Besides, he knew not to back down from a bear, and that they could be easily intimidated if he acted aggressive. "Come on, Mr. Bear, show yourself," he taunted. The plants continued to move. He clicked off the safety, slipping his forefinger inside the trigger guard. "I'm warning you!" He heard a rustle, and then everything went still. James approached the field slowly, one cautious step followed by another, ready to fire at the smallest provocation. He squeezed down a row. The ripe-for-harvest milky white buds on the plants gave off a skunk-like odor. He used the muzzle of his assault rifle to prod back the leaves and then stopped to listen. A distracting breeze picked up, rustling the leaves in the surrounding trees. "This is your last chance. You better get!" A dark figure lurched out from behind the plants on his left. James swung the barrel of his gun around and pulled back the trigger as the thing dove back into the marijuana bushes for cover. The bullets strafed the tops off the plants. James heard a loud grunt, followed by an ear-piercing primordial scream that was so loud it echoed through the forest. He tried to rationalize what he had just seen. It had all happened so fast. It had been enormous, covered with thick, grayish fur. That was no bear. A bear would have kept charging, plunged him into the ground, and mauled the life out of him with its sharp claws. This creature seemed to sense danger the moment he pointed his gun. Whatever it was, James knew he had hit it, as there was blood splatter on the leaves of one of the plants. And then he heard a tormented yowl. Ice water jetted through his veins. Even though he was brandishing a high-caliber weapon, James felt somewhat unprotected, like somehow the situation had reversed, and he had suddenly become the prey.